Why are you sitting here all alone, sweetheart? Maya Williams' voice was soft, her southern drawl settling into the words like a lullaby. Jasmine flinched. The question caught her off guard, not because it was intrusive, but because it was the first time anyone had acknowledged her all night. She blinked and turned her head slowly, unsure if she'd imagined it. But there Maya was, crouched ever so slightly, her tray balanced perfectly, her eyes warm and steady. In the sea of glittering gowns and champagne flutes, no one had spoken to Jasmine. Not once. Not even a polite nod. The guests passed her like she was furniture. No, less than that. She was scenery. And then came this woman, a catering staff member of all people, breaking through that frozen silence with a single sentence that hit Jasmine like a wave. Her throat tightened. The reception hall at Whispering Pines Resort in rural Texas glittered with excess gold and ivory decor, chandeliers like upside-down galaxies, and a jazz quartet near the bar playing a rendition of Cheek to Cheek. It was a party designed to impress, but in a quiet, dim corner near the service entrance, Jasmine Langley, 16, sat in her wheelchair, the folds of her midnight-colored dress cascading like shadows. Maya had passed by several times that evening. The first time, she noticed Jasmine sitting quietly with her hands folded neatly. The second, she noted that no one had approached her. By the third pass, Maya's brow furrowed. The girl hadn't moved, hadn't smiled, hadn't spoken. Not one soul at that reception had taken notice of her, not even a glance. It wasn't right. Now, standing beside Jasmine, Maya's presence felt oddly significant. She wasn't just offering a canapé or pouring wine. She was acknowledging something deeper, a dignity, a presence, a story waiting to be seen. "I'm fine," Jasmine replied quickly, her voice taut, defensive, but her fingers betrayed her, nervously twisting the edge of her skirt. Maya tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable but kind. "You don't look fine. And if I may say, this party's missing its brightest spark." That almost made Jasmine laugh. Almost. "Everyone's busy," she said, trying to sound nonchalant. "I'm just not part of it." And it wasn't a lie. She had arrived earlier with an aide, who had helped her out of the van and into her chair, wheeling her straight to a corner near an enormous vase of white lilies. From there, the world had spun without her. Even the wedding photographer had asked her to move slightly out of the frame. "I don't belong here," Jasmine murmured. "This isn't really my kind of scene." Maya glanced around the room, guests toasting, snapping photos, gossiping over lobster puffs. "Oh, honey, it ain't that you don't belong. It's that they forgot how to see people who remind them of life's hard truths." The words hung in the air. Jasmine swallowed, the sting catching her by surprise. She looked at Maya again, properly this time, and saw the wisdom behind those brown eyes, the lines that spoke of endurance more than age. "I used to dance," Jasmine said suddenly. The words escaped before she could reconsider. "Before the accident, I was going to be a choreographer." Maya's expression softened. "Is that so?" "My youngest, Tasha, used to watch dance competitions on television and copy every move. Nearly broke the coffee table trying to do a pirouette." Despite herself, Jasmine smiled. "I was on the junior dance team at Lincoln High. Then, we were driving to a benefit gala last year. Truck ran a red light." Her voice faded. "I'm sorry," Maya said, the sincerity in her voice unmistakable. Jasmine shrugged with one shoulder, the other stiff. "They said I might regain partial mobility, but it's slow. My dad, he hasn't danced either, not since. He used to be strong, CEO of Langley Holdings. You should have seen him before the stroke." Maya eased herself onto the edge of a nearby banquet chair, her tray still steady in one hand. "Funny thing about dancing," she said. "People think it's all legs and rhythm, but really, it's about listening. To the music, to yourself, to who you want to be again." Jasmine stared at her. Maya wasn't like the other staff, all rushing and avoiding eye contact. There was a gravity to her, a grace that had nothing to do with her uniform. "Did you ever dance?" Jasmine asked. Maya nodded slowly. "Tap dancer. Atlanta, 1985. Nothing fancy. Church halls, local recitals. Until I lost my foot to diabetes." But in my mind, I never stopped. Every Sunday, when the choir starts, I still dance, in my bones. For a moment, two worlds, one of mahogany boardrooms, another of linoleum church halls, sat side by side in perfect silence. Two women, one young and one seasoned, sharing something no one else in the room could see. Then came a voice, sharp and sugar-coated. "Maya, please get back to serving table 12. They're waiting on appetizers." Cynthia, Robert Langley's personal assistant, had appeared, her makeup flawless, her smile as crisp as her tone. Her stilettos tapped an impatient rhythm against the marble floor. Maya stood, unshaken. "Of course, ma'am. Just making sure this young lady didn't need anything." Cynthia barely glanced at Jasmine. "She's fine. She has everything she needs." But Jasmine saw it the way Maya's jaw tensed, the flicker of protectiveness that almost made her speak back. Almost. Cynthia leaned toward Jasmine and whispered, "Best not to fraternize with staff, darling. It makes people talk." Jasmine said nothing, but something stirred inside her, a flicker of who she used to be, on a stage under hot lights, twirling without apology. She watched Maya retreat into the crowd, her tray lifted once more, weaving through sequins and champagne bubbles like a quiet protest. "Why are you sitting here all alone?" Maya had asked, and for the first time all evening, Jasmine began to wonder that herself. If you've ever felt forgotten in a crowded room, press like and tell us where you're watching this from. We promise someone nearby might just be listening too. The music swelled as another tray of champagne flutes floated past Jasmine's eyeline. She sat motionless, still near the lilies, her fingers tracing the grain in the armrest of her wheelchair. The words Maya had spoken lingered in her mind, like embers that refused to die. "Funny thing about dancing, it's about listening to who you want to be again." Jasmine had always known silence. She'd grown up as the quiet daughter of a loud man. Her father, Robert Langley, CEO of Langley Holdings, commanded every room with the same presence he brought to board meetings. He used to say, "When I walk in, the air changes," and it always did. People stood straighter, laughed louder, scrambled to impress. Jasmine never minded his intensity. It made her feel safe, tethered. But after the accident, and then the stroke, that presence became a ghost. It happened almost exactly a year ago. They had been on the way to a charity gala in Houston. She was wearing silver heels she'd begged her father to let her borrow. She remembers the laughter in the car, his teasing about her dancing like a windmill. Then glass, screaming, a smell she'll never forget. Her spine had compressed in 2 places. Her father had a stroke 3 days later from the stress. Neither of them had danced since. Her mother had passed when Jasmine was 8, so Robert had raised her like a partner more than a child. "We're a team," he'd said. "Langley and Langley. I build business. You build beauty." Jasmine looked toward the center of the ballroom, where couples danced with practiced ease. A cousin she barely knew twirled her new husband under the chandelier, their smiles wide, effortless. Jasmine's chest tightened. Suddenly, she heard the gentle clink of a plate being placed beside her. She turned. Maya was back, kneeling slightly, balancing a small dish of finger sandwiches on the edge of the table beside her. "Noticed you didn't touch any of the entrees," Maya said quietly. "Thought you might like something simple, no fuss." Jasmine blinked, almost stunned. "You came back." Maya shrugged with a soft smile. "My mama always said, if you see someone hungry and don't feed them, don't call yourself kind." Jasmine stared at the plate, then reached slowly for one of the sandwiches. Her hand still trembled slightly when she reached out too far. Maya didn't offer help, didn't hover. She simply watched, as if her presence alone could steady Jasmine. "You remind me of Tasha," Maya said, sitting again on the empty banquet chair. "She was quiet too, until she got on stage. Then you couldn't stop her." "She danced?" Jasmine asked between small bites. "Everywhere. Hallways, sidewalks, gas stations." Maya chuckled, said the world was her stage. Then came college bills, long shifts, life. "You know how it is." Jasmine nodded. "Yeah, I do. A moment past. My dad used to dance with me," Jasmine offered, eyes still down. "We had this silly tradition. Every New Year's Eve, no matter where we were, he'd put on Moon River, and we'd waltz in the living room, even when I was little, standing on his feet. Maya smiled gently, her voice softening. That's beautiful. It was, Jasmine said. Last year, he promised we'd do it at this wedding too. Said we'd show everyone how Langley girls lead the floor. Maya raised her brows. So what happened? Jasmine gave a bitter laugh. Reality. Wheelchairs. Strokes. Pain management. Public pity. Maya didn't flinch. She looked Jasmine straight in the eye. I don't see pity. I see a girl who showed up, sat tall, and still shines brighter than half the people here. Jasmine's throat tightened again. It wasn't that Maya was complimenting her, it was how she meant every word like it was gospel. Then Maya said, almost as an afterthought, you know, dance doesn't care if you're standing. Jasmine frowned slightly. It doesn't, Maya continued. Rhythm lives in your hands, in your breath, in your shoulders, your smile. My left foot's artificial. Been dancing in my mind since they took the real one. Jasmine blinked. Wait, you? Lost it to diabetes 5 years ago, Maya said, matter of fact. Tasha cried more than I did. I told her, you don't need 2 legs to feel a beat. You need one heart that still wants to move. Jasmine let that settle. She imagined Maya tapping in the kitchen, her rhythm echoing in silence, just for herself. The quartet started a slower tune, piano and bass humming in harmony, and Jasmine recognized it instantly. Moon River. Her heart stopped. Maya turned toward the music, then back at Jasmine. What do you say? To what? A seated waltz. Jasmine's eyes widened. Here? Here, right now, just us. No spotlight, no stage, just the corner and a promise. Jasmine hesitated. Her fingers gripped the armrest. She hadn't moved that way in months. But then something broke loose inside her. A rebellion, maybe. Or just the ache of a tradition unfulfilled. She nodded. Maya stood and stepped closer, setting her tray aside. May I? She asked, holding out both hands. Jasmine placed hers gently in Maya's. The older woman swayed slightly, and Jasmine followed first hesitantly, then with growing confidence. Their hands moved in rhythm, bodies swaying gently, shoulders lifting and turning in time with the music. The chandelier glowed above them, unnoticed by the crowd. But for Jasmine, it was as if the world paused. 2 women, one with a missing foot, one with motionless legs, and yet somehow they danced. When the final notes of Moon River faded, Jasmine felt her eyes sting. Maya gave her a gentle nod. That wasn't about pity. That was a promise kept, in a new way. Jasmine whispered, "Thank you." Maya squeezed her hand. "Don't thank me yet. The real dance is just getting started." Jasmine watched Maya walk away again, this time with a sway in her step. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel like an outsider in her own story. If you believe Maya is truly a kind soul, give her a like. And don't forget to share where you're watching this from, because someone nearby might be watching it too. The next morning dawned overcast, casting a soft gray light through the windows of Jasmine's guest suite at the resort. She sat by the window wrapped in a thick throw blanket, her eyes tracing the shapes of raindrops as they slid down the glass. The memory of the previous night danced in her mind, the gentle sway of her hands in Maya's, the rhythm that had lived dormant now awakened. It had been just a few minutes, but it had changed something. She hadn't told her father yet. Robert Langley, once the lion of industry, was now confined to a motorized recliner in the east wing of the resort. He rarely spoke unless prompted, and barely moved his right side. Since the stroke, his eyes had dulled. Jasmine missed his booming laugh, the booming everything. These days, he mostly nodded, ate in silence, and watched the evening news with the volume far too high. Jasmine wheeled herself down the hallway to visit him, her movements more confident than they'd been in months. As she entered his suite, she was greeted by the low hum of classical music and the scent of oatmeal and antiseptic. Cynthia stood near a tray, checking the labels of his morning pills. "Morning," Jasmine said quietly. Cynthia looked up, a polished smile in place. "Good morning, Jasmine. Your father is resting after therapy. The neurologist increased his dosage. He needs peace and consistency." Jasmine frowned. "He looks groggier every time I see him." He was supposed to regain speech. "It's a process," Cynthia said curtly. "You have to trust the protocol." Jasmine bit her lip but said nothing. She turned toward her father. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, before landing on her face. A tiny glimmer of recognition sparked there. "Hey, Dad," she whispered. "I danced last night. Sort of, with someone who reminded me of you." His left hand twitched slightly. "She told me I don't need legs to dance," Jasmine said, smiling despite the lump in her throat. "Just one heart that wants to move. Remember how you used to say that? You said it after I sprained my ankle before the Lincoln showcase." His eyelids drooped again, and Jasmine reached forward, placing her hand gently on his. "I'm still your partner. Langley and Langley, right?" She sat there a little longer, watching him drift back into that foggy place she hated so much. Later that day, Jasmine wheeled herself back to the reception hall. The cleanup crews were packing up tablecloths and florals, the magic of the night before being stuffed into crates. But one figure stood out: Maya, humming to herself as she folded napkins at the far end of the ballroom. "You tap danced," Jasmine said suddenly, rolling toward her. "You said you were a tap dancer." Maya looked up, her smile blooming. "That I did. My mama said I had rhythm in my bones before I could walk. Would you show me?" Maya chuckled, her eyes twinkling. "Sweetheart, I haven't tapped for an audience since 2098. And that was at a Baptist fundraiser where half the people were clapping off beat." Jasmine tilted her head. "Please?" There was something in her voice that made Maya pause. It wasn't just curiosity, it was need. A quiet hunger for something lost. Maya glanced around. The hall was mostly empty now, just the dull hum of vacuum cleaners in the background. She reached down, tugged her left pant leg slightly, revealing a sleek carbon fiber prosthetic. "All right," she said, stepping into the cleared dance space near the archway. With a deep breath, she stood tall, one hand on her hip, and began. The rhythm was slow at first, a series of soft heel taps and toe shuffles that echoed across the marble. Then came the signature triplet: heel, heel, toe, toe, heel, toe. Maya's face changed. Her posture straightened, her eyes closed briefly. She wasn't just dancing. She was remembering. Jasmine sat transfixed. Maya ended with a crisp spin and a final stomp, then opened her eyes to see Jasmine applauding with wide, tearful eyes. "I felt every beat," Jasmine said. "That's how you know it was real," Maya replied, breathless but grinning. Suddenly, from across the hall, the sharp clack of heels broke the moment. Cynthia was approaching, a clipboard in hand and a look of disapproval etched across her face. "Miss Langley," she said tightly, "you have a family therapy session scheduled in 10 minutes. We need to keep to the itinerary." "I didn't see that on the board," Jasmine replied, her tone cool. "It was just added. Your father's doctor insists on structured interaction. This," she gestured toward Maya, "is not part of the plan." Maya raised her chin. "We were just stretching muscles, mind and body." Cynthia gave her a thin smile. "I'm sure the kitchen needs you back." I'm on break," Maya said evenly. Jasmine looked from one woman to the other, a tension crackling between them. "I'll be there in a few minutes," she said finally. But I'm not done talking to Maya. Cynthia's eyes narrowed, but she turned on her heel and left without another word. Jasmine let out a long breath. "She always acts like she owns the place." "She's scared," Maya replied softly. "Of what?" "Of anyone who reminds her she's not in control. People like us folks with scars, we mess with people's illusions." Jasmine considered that. "Can you teach me to tap?" she asked suddenly. Maya smiled. "Yes, ma'am. But first, we start with rhythm. Let your fingers find it." They practiced together for 10 minutes. Maya clapped and tapped on the floor, guiding Jasmine's hands to mimic the beat. "Tap, tap, pause, tap." Jasmine grinned. It wasn't dancing. Not yet. But it was something. It was movement. As Jasmine wheeled back toward her father's suite later, something in her felt lighter. The rhythm still thumped softly in her palms. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would be the first stone in a path that would challenge everything: family, trust, and the thin line between silence and voice. And somewhere in that ballroom, Maya's final stomp still echoed, like a quiet declaration. "We are still here. We are still moving." Later that week, the Langley family held a private dinner in one of the smaller resort salons. It was supposed to be a relaxed gathering, just immediate family and close associates, but for Jasmine, it felt more like a corporate meeting disguised with floral centerpieces and overpriced wine. She sat at the far end of the table, next to her father's wheelchair. His eyes were alert tonight, more so than usual, and she took that as a small victory. Across from her, Cynthia spoke softly to a board member's wife about company expansion plans, as if Jasmine wasn't present. Her father nodded occasionally but didn't speak. A waiter arrived with a tray of appetizers. Jasmine noticed the uniform immediately, but the face was different. No Maya. A small knot tightened in her stomach. "Excuse me," she said quietly to the waiter. "Is Maya working tonight?" He blinked, startled that she had spoken. She's been reassigned to kitchen prep." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Why?" I'm not sure, miss. Orders from management, I think." Jasmine felt the knot tighten into something sharper. She looked down the table toward Cynthia, who now sipped her wine like someone who had won a quiet battle. After the dinner, Jasmine didn't wait. She rolled straight to the staff entrance behind the ballroom, ignoring the looks from other guests and staff alike. She pressed the service bell. A moment later, a kitchen assistant peeked out. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Maya Williams." The assistant hesitated. "She's on break. Break room's through the back corridor, second left." Jasmine thanked him and wheeled forward, her heart thudding. As she turned the corner, she saw Maya sitting alone on a plastic chair, sipping tea from a paper cup. Her shoes were off, and her prosthetic rested beside her on the floor. Maya looked up, startled, then broke into a smile. "Well, look who rolled in. I heard they reassigned you." Maya shrugged. "Kitchen's quieter. They think I'll cause less of a distraction back here." Jasmine clenched her fists on the armrests. "This is because of me, isn't it?" "It's not about blame, honey," Maya said. "It's about roles. People like Cynthia don't like the lines blurred between staff and guests, especially not when it comes to daughters of CEOs dancing with women like me." Jasmine lowered her voice. "You're not just staff to me. You're the only person here who actually sees me." Maya reached down, sliding her prosthetic foot back on and strapping it. "That's kind of you. But kindness don't change policies. What matters is what you do next." Jasmine was silent for a moment. "Can I do something? I mean, to help?" Maya smiled faintly. "You've already done more than most ever would." They sat in silence. The hum of industrial refrigerators buzzed in the background. Finally, Jasmine spoke again. "Would you come tomorrow morning, to the garden terrace? I want to practice again." Maya hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be there, 6:30, before anyone's watching." The next morning, the terrace was quiet, bathed in early golden light. Birds fluttered along the hedges, and dew clung to every petal in the resort's pristine rose garden. Jasmine waited in her chair, a Bluetooth speaker at her side. Maya arrived in black sneakers and a cardigan that had seen better days. She gave Jasmine a mock bow. "Ready for class?" "For once, yes." They began slowly tapping out rhythms on their laps, clapping beats, humming melodies. Maya guided Jasmine's hands like a conductor. "Feel it first, count it second, dance it third." Jasmine's movements were still rough, but each day brought more grace, more control, and laughter. Real laughter, the kind she thought she'd forgotten how to make. They met every morning for a week. One day, Maya brought coffee and donuts. Another, she showed Jasmine a video from her daughter's high school dance recital. Each day added another layer to their bond, a teacher and student. Yes, but also something deeper. Confidants, kindred spirits. Until the 8th morning, Jasmine arrived at the terrace early, eager, but Maya never showed. She waited an hour, then 2. Finally, she rolled to the kitchen entrance again. This time, the assistant looked uncomfortable. "She's not working today." What? Is she okay?" She was let go. Jasmine froze. "Why?" The assistant's voice dropped. "They said she violated conduct policy, got too close to a guest." Her stomach dropped. "You mean me?" He looked away. "I shouldn't say more." Jasmine didn't return to her suite. She didn't cry. Instead, she rolled into the Langley Holdings mobile office set up in one of the resort conference rooms. She found Cynthia inside, reviewing vendor reports. "I need to talk to you," Jasmine said. Cynthia didn't look up. "If it's about Maya." "It is," Jasmine interrupted, her voice hard. "You had no right." "I followed procedure," Cynthia said coldly. Staff aren't permitted private engagements with guests, especially minors. She was teaching me to dance. She was overstepping. We're trying to maintain an image here. Jasmine wheeled closer. What image? One where your CEO's daughter is paraded around like she's fine while everyone ignores the fact that she's barely holding it together. Cynthia's expression shifted slightly. That's unfair. No, Jasmine said. What's unfair is punishing someone for caring, for reminding me that I'm still a person. She turned and wheeled away. That evening, she sat again by her father's chair. He seemed more alert, his hand twitching as she played Moon River softly from her phone. I'm going to find Maya, she whispered, and when I do, we're going to dance again, this time with the whole room watching. Robert's fingers curled faintly, and for the first time, Jasmine felt like she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to fight. The resort had never felt colder. Jasmine sat at the edge of the garden terrace, the same spot where only days ago she and Maya had been clapping rhythms and whispering joy into each sunrise. Now, the silence was heavy, broken only by the faint rustle of the wind in the hedges. Her hands rested motionless on her lap. A metronome stopped mid-beat. She hadn't seen Maya since the kitchen assistant had whispered the news. Let go. Conduct violation. Too close to a guest. As if compassion had become criminal. Jasmine clenched her jaw. That phrase haunted her the way Cynthia had said it so casually, like Maya was a janitor who had stepped over an invisible line of respectability. But this wasn't about policy. It was about fear. The fear of disruption, of change. The fear of someone like Maya reminding a room full of polished smiles what dignity looked like beneath a catering apron. The sun had risen fully when Jasmine noticed the envelope tucked beneath her tray on the terrace table. Her name was scrawled across the front in delicate cursive. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Dear Jasmine, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye properly. They said I broke a rule I didn't know existed, showing up early to teach a young woman to dance. Truth is, I didn't do it just for you. I did it for me too. Watching you move, struggle, laugh, reminded me of my daughter before the world hardened her. Reminded me of myself before the pain turned quiet. You've got a light in you, not the showy kind. The kind that burns slow and steady, the kind people forget about until it warms their hands. Keep moving, even when they tell you to sit still. Keep tapping, even if nobody claps. And if you ever hear Moon River again, close your eyes. I'll be dancing too. Maya. Jasmine read it 3 times. The words folded into her chest like a second heartbeat. Her breath caught on the last line. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she imagined Maya's footsteps click, tap, click echoing across the stone terrace. A ghostly rhythm, a promise unfinished. That afternoon, Jasmine made a decision. She wheeled into the resort's media room, opened her laptop, and began typing. She drafted a letter, not to Cynthia, not to resort management, but to the Langley Holdings Board of Trustees. She wrote about dignity, about how a company that prides itself on leadership must also know when to follow compassion. She wrote about her own struggle, not just the wheelchair or the isolation, but the silent treatment of those who see vulnerability as inconvenience. And she told them about Maya. She included the letter. And a request. Reinstatte hier. That evening, she handed it to the family's legal advisor, an older man named Raymond Cole, who had known Jasmine since she was a toddler. He skimmed the first few paragraphs, then looked up with raised brows. You wrote this. I lived it, Jasmine said. Raymond nodded slowly. You know this'll make waves. I'm counting on it. 2 days later, the board met privately at the resort. Jasmine wasn't invited, but she didn't need to be. She had already spoken in the language they respected: documentation, clarity, and quiet conviction. The next morning, a knock came at her door. Raymond entered, carrying a manila folder. You caused a stir, he said with a half-smile. Good, Jasmine replied. What did they say? They're considering it. Officially, Maya's employment wasn't terminated, just suspended pending review. Jasmine's eyes lit up. So there's a chance? There's more than a chance. Raymond leaned in. One of the board members told me off the record that your letter reminded them of why this company was founded. Not just profit. Pride. Legacy. Humanity. Jasmine let out a slow breath. She deserves more than just a second look. She deserves a spotlight. That same day, Jasmine began planning something bigger. With the help of a young resort staffer named Kevin, she put together a surprise. Kevin had been silently refilling drinks and clearing plates all week. But when Jasmine asked him about sound systems and dance lights, his face lit up. "You want to put on a show?" He grinned. "Just one dance," Jasmine said. "But it has to count." Together, they found a tucked-away garden room with a small platform stage. Kevin brought in speakers, dimmable lights, and even tracked down an old fog machine from a nearby theater supply. By the end of the week, the room was ready. Jasmine sent out private invitations to a handful of people, board members, staff, and without permission, Cynthia. Then she made one last stop. She found Maya at a small church in town. It took calling 3 local congregations and bribing a taxi driver, but she found her sitting in the back row of an afternoon choir rehearsal, humming along with the altos. Maya turned as Jasmine entered, surprise softening into something deeper. "Well now," she said, "look what the wind blew in." "Oh, I need one more dance," Jasmine said, "and this time, the room will be watching." Maya blinked. "Jasmine, I've got the space, the music, and a spotlight. All I need is my partner." There was a long pause. Then Maya rose slowly, her voice steady. "Well, child, let's give them something they'll never forget." The soft hum of anticipation filled the garden ballroom as the lights dimmed. Jasmine sat off stage in her wheelchair, hidden behind a curtain of ivy and string lights, her palms slightly damp. This wasn't the kind of ballroom meant for wheelchairs and quiet defiance. It was designed for gala gowns and smooth-heeled twirls. But tonight, it would become something else entirely. Outside, guests began to arrive, each one having received Jasmine's carefully worded invitation. They were board members, Langley executives, a few local employees, and even Cynthia, who entered last in a gray pantsuit, clutching a leather folio like armor. She took a seat near the back, eyes already scanning for signs of trouble. Jasmine peeked through the curtain. Her heart pounded. She spotted Raymond, seated in the front row, giving her a subtle nod. Next to him, her father's wheelchair had been rolled in by his caregiver, a blanket tucked over his legs. Robert Langley's face was still, but his eyes were open and watchful. That was enough. A low chime echoed across the room. Kevin dimmed the lights further, and a single spotlight bathed the center of the platform stage. The hush was complete. Then Maya walked out. She wore a soft, flowing blouse and black slacks, her posture tall and measured. No catering uniform, no tray in hand, just her presence quiet and commanding. The room shifted. Whispers started. Cynthia's eyes narrowed. Maya didn't flinch. She moved to the center of the stage and waited. The music began Moon River, of course. But this version was stripped back to piano and strings, slower, haunting, every note hung in the air like breath. From stage left, Jasmine rolled forward. Her hands trembled on the wheels, but she kept moving until she reached center stage. The spotlight widened to include her, then silence again. Maya stepped closer, holding out both hands. Jasmine placed hers gently on top. They began to move. It wasn't a traditional dance. Maya stepped in slow rhythm, and Jasmine's upper body mirrored her arms swaying, fingers fluttering like wings. They circled each other, one standing, one seated, yet somehow perfectly in sync. When Maya tapped lightly on the stage, Jasmine echoed the rhythm with her palms against the wheelchair's frame. The audience sat transfixed. Somewhere in the second verse, Maya turned slowly, guiding Jasmine in a pirouette with her chair. The move was small, nearly imperceptible, but it changed everything. It was no longer just a girl in a wheelchair. It was a dancer, reclaiming the floor she had been denied. At the final note, Jasmine extended one hand skyward. Maya took it, bowed her head, and kissed Jasmine's fingers with quiet reverence. Silence. Then the applause, not the polite clapping of executives trying to impress. This was something more. It started with Raymond, rising to his feet. Then others followed, even some of the kitchen staff, who had snuck in through the back, clapped and cheered. One woman near the aisle wiped her eyes. Another called out, "That's how you teach the world." Cynthia didn't stand, but she didn't leave either. Backstage, Jasmine exhaled. Her body shook from adrenaline and emotion. "You did it," Maya whispered, kneeling beside her. "No," Jasmine said. smiling through tears. We did. Suddenly, there was movement near the curtain. Raymond stepped in, followed by two board members, Mrs. Bennet and Mr. Trask, both known for their conservatism. They looked at Maya, then at Jasmine. Mrs. Bennet spoke first. "Miss Langley, that was extraordinary." Jasmine nodded, still catching her breath. "Thank you." Mr. Trask cleared his throat. "Miss Williams, your suspension is lifted effective immediately. Maya raised a hand gently. "With respect, sir, I won't be returning to serve shrimp cocktail." He blinked. "I beg your pardon?" Jasmine sat taller. "We have a proposal." Raymond handed them a packet. Inside were pages detailing a new Langley-funded program, the Still Moving Project, a community initiative to provide adaptive arts classes, dance therapy, and mentorship for disabled youth and elderly across Texas, led by none other than Maya Williams. Mr. Trask flipped through it, eyebrows raised. "You want company backing for this?" "Not just backing," Jasmine said firmly. "Sponsorship, space, outreach." Mrs. Bennet looked at Maya. "And you'd run it?" Maya nodded. "I've got rhythm, patience, and time. That's more than most." The silence stretched. Then Mrs. Bennet said quietly, "I think it's overdue." Raymond smiled. "Motion to approve?" "Seconded," said Mr. Trask. Later that evening, Jasmine wheeled herself to her father's suite. He was alone, the television muted, the room dim. She moved to his side, took his hand, and played a clip from the performance. As the screen showed Maya and Jasmine circling each other under the lights, Robert's eyes filled with tears. His fingers tightened around hers. "You proud of me, Dad?" she asked softly. His lips parted. Nothing came at first. Then, rough and hoarse, one word: "Always." Jasmine pressed her forehead to his hand. The battle wasn't over. She knew that. There would be skeptics, obstacles, more silences to break. But tonight, something had shifted. A floor had been reclaimed, and it had waited for them. 3 weeks later, the Langley Community Center opened its ballroom for the first adaptive dance workshop, part of the newly minted Still Moving project. The room had been a drab meeting hall just a month ago, but now it shimmered with soft golden lights, hand-painted murals of dancers in motion, and a brand new sound system donated anonymously, though everyone suspected Jasmine had something to do with that. Outside the building, a line had already formed. Children with leg braces, grandmothers with walkers, teens who sat in silence but whose eyes darted toward the music. It wasn't a traditional crowd, but then, this wasn't a traditional program. Maya stood by the entrance in a deep blue cardigan and soft sneakers, her prosthetic fully visible beneath rolled-up jeans. She welcomed each person with a quiet word or a tap on the shoulder, remembering names even when she'd only heard them once. Inside, Jasmine waited by the front table, organizing registration forms. Her movements had become quicker, more assured. She still had to ask for help sometimes, but she did so without shame. Raymond arrived first from the Langley board, carrying a crate of bottled water and muffins. "You sure you want me managing snacks?" he joked. "I was thinking of teaching the two-step, only if you don't mind getting shown up by a 9-year-old, Jasmine replied with a smirk. One by one, volunteers filtered in. Kevin from the resort helped tape soft mats to the floor. 2 nurses from the local clinic offered to stay and assist. Even one of the former resort security guards arrived and sheepishly offered to DJ. Then the doors opened. They came slowly at first, an elderly couple holding hands, a young boy pushed in by his older sister. But once the music began, the hesitation dissolved. Maya stood at the center, guiding a rhythm with her claps. It wasn't about footwork. It was about feeling. "Hands up," she called. "That's it, don't worry about matching me. Just match your own beat." Jasmine moved through the room, encouraging, adjusting, smiling. When she saw a young girl hesitating by the corner, she rolled over and offered a hand. "I'm Jasmine," she said. "Want to show me your version of a spin?" The girl giggled and twirled in place. Jasmine clapped. The girl's mother wiped her eyes nearby. Midway through the session, Maya dimmed the lights just slightly and changed the music. Moon River floated through the speakers again, this time played by a local pianist and violinist who had offered their time. Maya turned to Jasmine across the floor. "Partner?" she asked, lifting a brow. Jasmine rolled forward. Always. Their hands met again. But this time, the dance wasn't just for them. It rippled through the room. One by one, the other dancers, young, old, seated, standing, began to sway. Some held hands. Others simply moved as they could. The music stretched like a ribbon, binding them together in silent understanding. Robert Langley sat near the wall, his caregiver beside him. His eyes watched Jasmine the entire time. When she turned in her chair, her arm raised, his left hand lifted slightly, an echo of their old waltz. After the music ended, Maya spoke. "This," she said to the room, "is what movement looks like when nobody is told to sit still." The applause wasn't thunderous. It was better sustained, warm, and filled with something few people had felt in that room before: belonging. Afterward, Jasmine helped pack up supplies, laughing with a group of teens who had stayed to clean. Maya walked over and handed her a cup of iced tea. "You still glowing," Maya said. "It's sweat," Jasmine replied, grinning. "And maybe a little glow." They sat together for a moment on the side of the room, watching families linger and talk. "You know," Jasmine said softly, "there was a time when I thought my story ended with the accident, like the rest was just me sitting in someone else's movie." Maya turned to her. "You rewrote the script." "No," Jasmine said. "We did." Maya's eyes softened. "You're just getting started, child." As the final guests left and the lights dimmed, Jasmine looked out across the ballroom, the floor they had claimed, the space that now pulsed with purpose. She thought of her mother's laughter, her father's strength, the promise of every step Maya had tapped into her soul. She had been alone. Now she was leading, still moving, always moving. 2 weeks passed in a blur of music, laughter, and new beginnings. The Still Moving project quickly outgrew the modest Langley Community Center space. Every session saw more participants: veterans with amputations, grandmothers with fading memories, teens in wheelchairs craving confidence. Word had spread beyond town limits, catching the attention of local media. A journalist from the Austin Chronicle came by, scribbling notes as she watched Maya and Jasmine lead a circle of dancers through a rhythm exercise. Jasmine had never felt more alive. Each morning she woke with purpose. Her days were filled with planning, coordinating volunteers, reviewing grant applications, and designing flyers that emphasized what she now called invisible victories, moments when someone who hadn't smiled in years began to hum, or when a father with a cane took 3 confident steps forward for the first time in months. She had become the pulse of something larger than herself. But momentum has a way of stirring old dust. One afternoon, as Jasmine returned from a meeting with a local school district about integrating Still Moving into their special education curriculum, she found Cynthia sitting on a bench outside the center. Her sleek gray suit stood in sharp contrast to the mural behind her bright silhouettes of dancers mid-motion. She looked like a statue misplaced in a playground. "I didn't expect to see you here," Jasmine said, adjusting her brakes. "I didn't expect to come," Cynthia replied flatly. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Cynthia reached into her bag and pulled out a glossy brochure. It bore the Langley Holdings logo and read, "Annual Legacy Award Nominees." Jasmine's name was listed second. "They're nominating me?" Jasmine asked, surprised. Cynthia nodded. "For innovation in community outreach, and for salvaging the company's image after the incident at the resort." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "You mean the incident where you tried to erase a woman for being too real?" Cynthia exhaled slowly. "I didn't come here to fight." "Then why are you here?" "To warn you," Cynthia said, her tone clipped. "There are members of the board who see this project as a sideshow, a charity that distracts from your family's legacy. They're waiting for you to slip, to give them a reason to reclaim control." Jasmine stared at her. "And you?" "I see potential," Cynthia said carefully, "and risk. You've built this fast, Jasmine. Too fast. You've rallied public sympathy. But that's fickle. One mistake, one misstep, and it all unravels." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact," Cynthia said, "and you deserve to know it." A silence stretched between them. Then Jasmine leaned forward. "You came all this way to plant doubt, but let me tell you something. I've already fallen, Cynthia. I've already been pushed aside. The only thing left to lose now is fear." Cynthia studied her a moment longer. Then she stood, brushing invisible lint from her lap. The award ceremony is next month. If you're serious about protecting this place, you'll come. Let the board see you play the game. Jasmine didn't reply. That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. Cynthia's words clung to her skin like humidity, uncomfortable and inescapable. She rolled onto her side, staring at the ceiling fan. Had she been moving too fast? Could this all fall apart? The next morning, Maya arrived early. She found Jasmine in the storage room, sorting donation boxes with a distracted expression. "You look like someone poured salt in your sugar," Maya said, leaning against the doorframe. Jasmine sighed. Cynthia came by. That woman could sour lemonade with a smile. She said the board is watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. Maya walked in and sat on one of the folding chairs. "Well, they'll be waiting a long time." "You don't think I've rushed this?" Jasmine asked. "Built it too fast?" "I think when the house is burning, you don't wait for the blueprints. You get people out. You build what you can with what you have." Jasmine looked at her. "She wants me to go to the award ceremony." Maya considered that. "Do you want to?" "I don't know. It feels like playing their game." "Sometimes," Maya said, "you show up to their table just to flip it." Later that day, Jasmine made her decision. She called Raymond, asked him to pull a favor with the board, and submitted a formal request. The still-moving project would be showcased as the centerpiece of her nomination. Not just her story, but the voices, steps, and triumphs of every participant. "I won't stand on a podium," she told him, "but I'll bring the floor with me." The days leading to the ceremony were a whirlwind. Kevin helped compile footage and testimonies. Maya recorded a heartfelt introduction. Volunteers rehearsed a performance, a moving blend of spoken word and dance that captured what the project meant: movement, no matter the odds. The night before the event, Jasmine stood alone in the ballroom where it had all begun. The lights were dimmed. The echoes of old music and laughter lingered like memories in the walls. She whispered into the stillness, "We're ready." The Langley Legacy Awards were held in the heart of downtown Austin, inside a grand concert hall that once hosted symphonies and galas for oil barons and politicians. On the night of the event, the marble floors gleamed under chandeliers the size of trucks, and a red carpet unfurled down the staircase like a river of velvet. Guests in black tie attire filled the room, murmuring in measured tones, clutching programs that listed sponsors and honorees with gold-embossed lettering. Jasmine sat at the base of the steps in a tailored black dress, simple but elegant, her wheelchair gleaming as if it too understood the significance of tonight. Maya stood beside her in a flowing wine-colored blouse and slacks, her prosthetic polished, her curls framing a face set with quiet fire. "You ready?" Maya asked, eyes twinkling. "I was born in silence," Jasmine said softly. "Tonight I speak." They entered together, and as they did, heads turned. Some out of curiosity, some in discomfort. But others, those who had followed the project online, who had watched the viral dance videos, smiled, nodded, and leaned toward companions to whisper her name. Inside, the stage had been transformed. A portion of it had been cleared and lowered, creating accessible ramps and an open space lit with warm tones. Jasmine's request had been honored. If she could not rise to the stage would lower to meet her. Cynthia stood off to the side near the main sponsor table, her face unreadable. When her eyes met Jasmine's, she gave the briefest of nods. The ceremony opened with the usual acknowledgments: sponsors, major donors, a montage of Langley Holdings milestones. Jasmine watched, detached, until Raymond stepped up to the microphone. "This year's nominee for the Legacy Award in Innovation doesn't come with a product," he said. "She comes with a promise that movement is not reserved for the able. That rhythm lives in all bodies. That legacy is not just what we leave, it's what we lift." A light swept toward the center aisle. Jasmine rolled forward slowly, each turn of her wheel deliberate. Maya walked beside her, matching her pace. The audience quieted to a stillness that held its breath. The lights dimmed. The screen above the stage lit up. It began with a grainy video of Jasmine's early therapy sessions, stiff hands, hesitant gestures, her face weary. Then cut to the garden terrace dance with Maya. Then to the community center, children clapping, elders laughing, volunteers moving in harmony. A young boy's voice narrated. Before Miss Jasmine, I didn't think my body could be part of a dance. Now, I lead the warm-ups. Applause rippled through the crowd, but it wasn't until the live performance began that the room truly shifted. From the back of the hall, a line of dancers entered representing every face of the still-moving project. Some on crutches, some guided by service dogs. One woman twirled with the help of a walker wrapped in streamers. They flowed down the aisles, swirling around the stage in a gentle, synchronized wave. At the center, Jasmine and Maya took their place. This time, there was no music at first, just rhythm claps, taps, the roll of wheels on hardwood. Jasmine raised her arms, not as a plea but as a declaration. The others followed, mirroring her in a rising crescendo of sound and movement. Then the piano began. Not Moon River, but a new melody, something original, composed by one of the program's teen volunteers. It was hopeful, quiet at first, then building. The dancers lifted and turned, some spinning with grace, others simply rocking in place, but each movement radiated intention. It was a dance of reclamation, a dance of every room that once said no. When it ended, the room was silent for a beat too long. Then the applause began, and this time, it thundered. People rose to their feet not out of obligation, but because they couldn't stay seated. Tears shimmered on cheeks. Maya reached down and squeezed Jasmine's hand. Raymond returned to the microphone, his voice rough with emotion. I think we've already seen what legacy looks like. He paused, then added, the board has unanimously voted to fund Still Moving as a permanent initiative under the Langley Foundation, starting immediately. Gasps and applause followed. Jasmine's heart swelled, but her eyes scanned the room for one face. She found her father near the front. Robert Langley's eyes glistened. When Jasmine met his gaze, he lifted one hand shaky, but sure, and tapped it once on the armrest of his wheelchair. A beat. Her beat. Backstage, Maya handed Jasmine a towel and a bottle of water. You sure know how to crash a gala. I just told the truth, Jasmine replied, catching her breath. With movement. Maya grinned. You're going to change more than just rooms. You're going to change blueprints. Jasmine looked down at her own hands, once weak, now firm. Then let's build. 3 months after the awards, the Langley Foundation's headquarters featured something it never had before, a permanent studio space with wall-to-wall mirrors, wooden floors that welcomed wheels as warmly as bare feet, and portraits of dancers in motion, each framed with a short quote. Most of the quotes weren't from famous choreographers or philosophers. They were from participants of the Still Moving project. Movement is how my silence learned to shout. Rami, Sheba Asara. I thought my feet had forgotten joy, but they remembered. Gloria, 83. Even broken rhythm is still rhythm. Jasmine Langley. The studio was open 6 days a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays were for adaptive youth classes. Saturdays, Maya taught her signature rhythm circles, where anyone regardless of age or mobility could join in with claps, taps, or simply breath. On a quiet Wednesday morning, Jasmine wheeled into the studio before the first class. The space was still, the light pouring through the tall windows like honey. She moved slowly to the center of the room, where her reflection met her. For a moment, she just sat, watching herself. No makeup, no gala dress, just Jasmine. Alive. She placed her hands on her knees and breathed deeply. This was hers. And not just hers, this belonged to every soul who had ever felt invisible, pushed aside, or forgotten. Behind her, the door creaked open. It was her father. Robert Langley had insisted on seeing the space in person. Though his health had declined, he remained sharp, quiet, and observant. He entered with the help of his caregiver and slowly made his way to a cushioned seat near the back of the room. I wanted to see the legacy, he said softly. Jasmine wheeled toward him and took his hand. You're looking at it. He smiled faintly. You know, your mother would have adored this place. I hope so, she whispered. She'd have danced, he added, even if no one watched. They sat together for a long moment in silence. Then Jasmine said, Dad, I think I'm ready. For what? For the next step. He turned toward her, curious. I want to train instructors. Expand. We have the backing now. This shouldn't stay just here in Austin. He nodded slowly. Where? Dallas, Houston, maybe even Chicago next year. There are communities waiting. I can feel them. "You've got the vision," Robert said, squeezing her fingers. "And now, you've got the world listening." Later that day, Jasmine gathered with Maya and Kevin in the planning office. The whiteboard was already filled with scribbles, names, dates, potential partners. Maya leaned back in her chair, arms folded, eyes sharp. "You sure you're not burning out?" she asked. Jasmine smiled. "Not yet. I'm still moving." Maya chuckled. "That's my girl," Kevin added. "I've already got 3 volunteers from Houston asking when we start." It all felt real. Not a project, not a patch, a movement. That evening, a small celebration was held at the studio to mark the 3-month anniversary. The core dancers gathered. Gloria baked her famous peach cobbler, Rami brought his ukulele, and several parents showed up with thank you cards and cautious optimism etched into their smiles. As the music started, an improvised beat of claps, foot taps, and laughter, Jasmine stood at the center, just as she had on that garden terrace so many months ago. Maya joined her, arms wide. They didn't plan the dance. They never did. It began with a soft sway. Jasmine turned in her chair. Maya responded with a twist of her shoulders. Then Rami joined in, strumming his uke. Gloria clapped. A young girl spun with her service dog dancing beside her. No choreography, just belonging. And in the back, Robert watched, his hand gently tapping on the armrest in rhythm. After the music faded, Jasmine wheeled forward. "I want to thank you all," she said, "for trusting me, for showing up, for proving that rhythm isn't something you lose, it's something you rediscover." She paused, then added, "I used to think I lost everything after the accident, but now I know I just hadn't started yet." The crowd clapped. She looked at Maya. "You saved me." Maya shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just reminded you where the music was." That night, as the lights dimmed and the last guest left, Jasmine stayed behind. She rolled to the center one last time. Alone. She closed her eyes. She tapped once on her wheel. The echo bounced off the walls. A beginning. A reminder. A rhythm that would never end. 6 months later, the still-moving project had outgrown more than just its original space. It had grown beyond Austin into Dallas, San Antonio, even as far as Atlanta. 3 satellite programs had launched, each led by a new wave of instructors trained by Maya and Jasmine. The organization had become a name spoken not with sympathy, but with pride. It wasn't just a charity, it was a movement. But with growth came exposure, and exposure always invited scrutiny. It began with a news article. The headline was innocuous. "Langley Heiress's dance program, a heartwarming distraction or PR strategy." But the body of the article dug into the program's funding sources, hinting that Jasmine had been handed the spotlight, that the movement was less about the marginalized and more about image redemption. It questioned Maya's credentials, calling her a glorified waitress turned nonprofit face, and implied that Jasmine's awards were more about her last name than her merit. Jasmine read it in the early morning light, her hands clenched so tight on the tablet her knuckles paled. Kevin texted immediately, "Ignore it. One bitter piece can't erase what we've built." But Jasmine couldn't ignore it. Not when the story was picked up by 3 more outlets. Not when a local council delayed a funding vote, pending more transparency. Not when a parent from the Houston chapter pulled their child from a class, citing concerns about the real motives. In the studio, Maya found Jasmine staring at the mirror, the article still open beside her. "They don't know you," Maya said. "They don't know us. But they're shaping how others see us," Jasmine replied. "And if we lose trust, we lose everything." For the first time in months, the energy in the room dimmed. The momentum stuttered. That night, Jasmine lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the words PR strategy echoing in her mind. She thought of every step, every late night, every moment she'd second-guessed herself. Had she built something real or just dressed up her guilt? She needed to remember. The next morning, she rolled into the original Langley Community Center, now a training ground for new facilitators. There, among the mats and mismatched chairs, sat Gloria, the 8 3-year-old who had once shuffled in with her walker, and now taught a movement through storytelling class every Thursday. Jasmine watched from the doorway as Gloria stood, swaying gently, telling a story with her arms about her first school dance during segregation, when no one would hold her hand. "And then," Gloria said, her voice shaking, "my mama told me, dance with your shadow, girl. It's the only thing that'll never leave you. Jasmine felt something break open inside her. After the class, she approached Gloria. Can I ask you something? You don't have to ask. You just need to say it. Do you think this matters? Really matters? Gloria looked her straight in the eye. Child, you could disappear tomorrow, and what you built would still move. That's how you know it's real. The floor don't care about headlines. The rhythm is louder than doubt. Armed with that truth, Jasmine took action. She called a press conference not at a polished hotel ballroom, but at the studio itself, surrounded by mirrors, scuff marks, and framed quotes. Reporters gathered, some skeptical, others curious. Maya stood beside Jasmine, arms folded. Jasmine wheeled to the mic. I've read the articles, she began, and I understand the questions. I don't have a defense prepared. I have a story, my own, and hundreds of others. She gestured behind her, where a projector began to play clips, real, raw moments. Rami teaching a new student to clap to the beat, Gloria leading a memory, dance, a teenage boy laughing mid-spin as his mother wept nearby. This isn't about redemption, Jasmine said. It's about recognition, of movement, of story, of being seen. When the questions came, she answered each one not with polish, but with honesty. She acknowledged her privilege, her doubts, her failures, and she invited every outlet to visit the studios, to speak to participants, not to spin a narrative, but to feel the rhythm. Afterward, one reporter approached her privately. You know, he said, I came here thinking this was a fluff piece, but something changed in there. People do, Jasmine said, when they stop watching and start listening. In the weeks that followed, the tide turned. Parents who'd left brought their children back. Donations resumed. One of the original critics wrote a follow-up. We asked if Still Moving was real. We forgot to ask the people it was made for. The floor trembled, but it did not break. And in that trembling, Jasmine found a deeper truth. It wasn't about shielding the program from criticism. It was about letting it withstand it. Standing not on perfection, but on purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Jasmine and Maya sat outside the studio. You ever scared we'll lose it all? Jasmine asked. Maya took a slow breath. Every day. But then I remember we started this with nothing but a question. Jasmine smiled. Why is she alone? Maya nodded. And we answered it with music, with movement, with fire. They sat in silence, watching kids spill out from the evening class, their laughter chasing the wind. Still moving, still rising, still ready. The day the Still Moving National Summit opened in Chicago, the city was drenched in sunlight. The venue, a converted train station now serving as a community arts center, had once echoed with departures and arrivals. Now it pulsed with rhythms of belonging. Jasmine rolled through the entrance with Maya at her side. She wore a navy blazer over a soft silver blouse, simple slacks, and a smile that was no longer hesitant. A badge hung around her neck. Founder. Maya's badge read, Lead Mentor. But none of the titles really mattered. What mattered was that they had arrived, and so had over 400 participants from every corner of the country. People of all colors, ages, shapes, and mobility levels filled the space. Kids with leg braces played tag with seniors in motorized scooters. A deaf dancer taught a workshop on rhythm through vibration. Parents traded stories and hugs like old friends. It wasn't just a summit. It was a homecoming. The morning opened with a circle dance improvised, unchoreographed, yet deeply in sync. At the center, Jasmine and Maya stood hand in hand, the same way they had on that garden terrace nearly 2 years ago. When the music faded, Jasmine took the mic. There was a time, she began, when I thought broken meant finished, but I've learned broken can also mean open. She paused, the room hushed. This movement began not with a performance, but with a question, a simple one. Why is she alone? And from that, you answered, with steps, with hands, with breath. She glanced toward Maya, who nodded gently. We aren't here to perform for the world's approval. We're here to remember each other, to remind ourselves that movement isn't something you earn, it's something you own. The applause was deep, not loud, but it resonated, like a heartbeat. Workshops followed storytelling through gesture, trauma-informed choreography, panels on accessibility in the arts. Everywhere Jasmine turned, She saw sparks, people finding new ways to say, "I'm here." In the afternoon, Jasmine was called backstage. Robert Langley had arrived. Despite his worsening condition, he insisted on flying in. He entered the space flanked by 2 caregivers, his breath slow but steady. When Jasmine wheeled over to him, he reached out, his fingers shaking slightly. "I had to see it," he whispered. "You made it," she said, kissing his cheek. "No," he corrected gently. "You made it." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a ring, his wedding band. "Your mother used to tap this against the table whenever she was nervous," he said. Said it reminded her of her father's beat. "It's yours now." Jasmine took it reverently. The band was worn but warm, like it had waited for her. That evening, the closing ceremony began. Instead of a stage, the final performance unfolded on the floor among the audience. Jasmine and Maya danced again, but this time, so did everyone else. There were no spectators, just participants. The music was a slow, swelling piece composed by Rami, now 18, who had grown from shy student to co-director of youth programming. Near the end of the dance, Jasmine noticed something. Robert, in his wheelchair, lightly tapping the armrest in time with the music. His caregiver guided his arm, but the rhythm was his own. And in that moment, Jasmine saw it all. The little girl once ignored at a wedding, the server who dared to ask a question, the legacy redefined not through power, but through purpose. As the last note faded, the room stood still. Then applause erupted, not for a performance, but for a revolution made soft, personal, and unshakable. Backstage, Jasmine sat with Maya, the ring still in her hand. "What now?" Maya asked, her voice tired but glowing. "We rest," Jasmine said. "For a minute." And then?" Jasmine looked out toward the crowd, still swaying in afterglow. "Then we move again." They shared a quiet laugh. Outside, the night was cool. Jasmine looked up at the sky wide, patient, infinite. Somewhere, music played from a portable speaker. A child laughed. Wheels rolled on pavement. She felt no need to speak. The rhythm was enough.